There is a message coming through from someone tied to your heart, and it carries weight. So before you keep going, slow down for a second, breathe. What you are about to hear does not come from noise or drama. It comes from distance, silence, and feelings that were pushed down for far too long. This is not random. Something inside this connection has shifted, and now the emotions that stayed hidden are starting to rise. That person has been holding something in for a long time, much longer than they would ever admit out loud. This did not begin yesterday. It grew slowly, quietly, underneath the surface, while they acted normal, while they acted like nothing had changed, while they tried to move through life, as if your absence did not mean much. But they did not forget you. They did not suddenly stop caring. What happened is simpler and sadder than that. They buried what they felt, because they did not know how to deal with it. And buried feelings do not die. They wait. They grow. They get heavier in silence. What is coming through now is not peace. It is pressure. It is confusion. It is emotional discomfort that can no longer be ignored. Something recently woke this up inside them. Maybe it was a memory, maybe a place, maybe a quiet moment when life stopped distracting them long enough for the truth to catch up. Whatever it was, it brought you back into their mind in a strong way, and this time it stayed. If you are still here, listen closely, because the next part matters more than they want to admit. They are no longer just remembering you. They are feeling the cost of losing what you meant. That shift did not come softly. It came in waves. It came when they checked their phone and felt that strange emptiness, like something important was missing and no message on the screen could fill it. It came when they tried to enjoy normal life and still felt emotionally far away from everything around them. It came late at night, when the noise dropped, when the room got still, when there was nothing left to distract the mind from what had been avoided for too long. In those quiet hours, one thought kept rising again and again. What if they really lose you? Not for a moment, not for a phase, but in a way that cannot be easily repaired. That thought unsettles them. It follows them. Because now they are starting to understand something they pushed away for a long time. No one else feels like you. No one else brings that same comfort. No one else responds the same way, or creates that same emotional space they once took for granted. And this truth does not comfort them. It hurts. The urgency they feel is not just about love. It is also about fear. Fear of losing access to something meaningful that they did not value properly when they had it. If pride was gone, if fear was gone, if they could speak with complete honesty, they would admit they should have acted differently. They would admit they thought there would always be more time. They believed your presence would stay steady, no matter how inconsistent they became. But now they can see what silence really does. Silence creates distance, and when distance grows long enough, it starts to feel final. Stay with this, because the truth here is simple and sharp. Doing nothing was never neutral. It was a choice. And that choice changed the bond between you, little by little, until the connection no longer felt safe in the way it once did. They regret more than they show. They regret not showing up when it mattered. They regret not speaking when clarity was needed. They regret choosing avoidance when honesty would have meant everything. At the time, staying quiet felt easier. It felt safer. It gave them a false sense of control, as if silence could protect them from discomfort. But avoidance always asks for payment later. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in the same week or the same month. But the cost always comes. This person struggles with emotional expression, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much and do not know how to sort it. Opening up feels risky to them. It feels like exposure. It feels like losing control of how they are seen. So when they should speak, they pull back. When they should explain, they delay. When they should face emotion directly, they try to outweight it, hoping time will do the work for them. But ignored feelings do not fade. They stack up. They build pressure. And what stays unfaced inside eventually starts showing up outside through patterns, through consequences, through loss. That is where they are now. They are feeling the result of everything left unresolved, and one of the hardest things for them is this: they can sense that you are not in the same emotional place anymore. Your energy changed, your silence changed, your responses changed. You may still care, but you are no longer waiting in the old way. You are no longer chasing answers. You are no longer staying trapped inside confusion. You are no longer giving endless emotional space while receiving so little back. And that difference hits them harder than they expected, because they were used to your patience, they were used to your softness, they were used to your steady emotional presence, even when they were not offering the same in return. Now that familiar pattern is gone, and they can feel the loss of it. What they are afraid of losing is not only you as a person, it is the emotional safety your presence gave them, the way you understood them, the way you listened, the way you gave attention without making them feel judged or small. They are starting to see that not every bond can be replaced. Not every connection can be rebuilt somewhere else with a different face and the same depth. Some things are rare. Some people leave a shape behind that nobody else fits. That is what they are facing now, and it brings both regret and fear. They keep asking themselves difficult questions. Did they ruin something real? Did they take your presence for granted? Did they wait too long to show effort? Those thoughts circle through their mind, especially when they compare what they have now with what they had with you, and nothing feels the same. This is where the urgency grows, not because they suddenly became perfect, not because they transformed overnight, but because they are finally aware that time feels limited. They can feel the emotional door between you slowly moving toward a close, not with drama, not with loud final words, but with a quiet shift where you simply stop feeling the same attachment. That kind of ending scares them more than anger ever could. They want to reach out. They want to explain. They want to say sorry in a way that sounds real and not convenient. But fear still blocks them. Fear of rejection. Fear of being too late. Fear that your heart no longer moves the way it once did. So they hesitate. They type messages and erase them. They imagine conversations that never happen. And while they wait, the pressure inside keeps rising. Do not miss this part, because this is where the story turns. Awareness has arrived. Change, however, is still uncertain. This is not a promise that everything will suddenly become different. It is not a guarantee that they will come back stronger, clearer, and fully ready. It is something quieter than that. It is realization. It is the painful moment when someone sees clearly what they failed to value at the right time. But what matters just as much is what this means for you. You are not where you used to be. You are not sitting in the same emotional place, hoping the same hope, carrying the same confusion. You have already started moving forward inside yourself, even if that movement was slow and private. That is why the energy feels different now. They are replaying old memories, but they are seeing them through a new lens. Not ego, not comfort, loss. They remember your effort more clearly now. They remember your patience. They remember how many times you tried to understand them, even when that understanding was not matched. And those memories feel heavier because now they can see what they missed while living through it. They also realize something simple and hard. You were never asking for too much. You were not asking for perfection. You were asking for presence. You were asking for consistency. You were asking to be met halfway. And that is what they failed to give. They chose the comfort of avoidance over the discomfort of growth. They chose delay over honesty. They chose distance over directness. And now they are living with the result of those choices. You, meanwhile, are seeing more clearly. You are thinking more deeply. You are no longer shaped by uncertainty the way you once were. That inner shift creates a distance that cannot be hidden anymore. They are standing at an emotional crossroads now. One path feels safe because it protects them from vulnerability. The other path asks for truth, responsibility, and exposure. And that second path is the only one that could ever rebuild what was damaged. But that step is hard for them, because facing you means facing themselves. That is the part they fear most. They are starting to understand that loss becomes visible before it becomes final. First it is a feeling, Then it becomes awareness. Then one day it becomes reality. Right now they are somewhere between awareness and fear. They can sense you moving forward, not from anger, not from revenge, but from clarity. And clarity is terrifying to someone who waited too long, because clarity does not beg, it does not chase, it does not keep the same door open forever. They are not only scared of losing you, they are scared of what that loss says about them, that they stayed silent too long, that they waited too long, that they assumed too much and acted too little, and whether they are ready or not. That truth is standing in front of them now. There is another layer to this. This person has been carrying many unsaid things for a long time, not just one missed message, not just one delayed response, many moments. Small moments that seemed harmless at the time, moments where honesty could have entered the room but did not, moments where clarity could have been offered but silence was chosen instead. Those moments now feel much larger in their memory because they can see how each one added distance between you. It was never only about not caring, it was about fear, fear of being open, fear of being misunderstood, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of losing control of their image. So instead of speaking, they stayed still. Instead of meeting the truth directly, they delayed it. But time collects what is avoided, it stores it, it returns it later with more weight. And now they are carrying that weight. If this is hitting your heart, stay with it, because the next truth is one they are only now beginning to see about you. You did not leave in one loud moment. You did not explode and disappear. You adjusted slowly. You adapted to what was being given. You stopped filling emotional gaps that were never supposed to be yours to fill alone. You stopped explaining yourself again and again. You stopped overgiving where consistency was not coming back to meet you. Without making a dramatic announcement, you started protecting your own peace. That change was quiet, and because it was quiet, they did not understand it at first. But now they do. They can feel that you do not lean in the same way anymore. You do not push for understanding with the same emotional force. There is a calmness in you now, and that calmness unsettles them. Because calm does not look like confusion. Calm looks like clarity. Calm looks like someone who has made deep decisions inside, even if those decisions were never spoken out loud. They are beginning to understand that they cannot depend on your uncertainty to keep the connection open anymore. You are no longer waiting in confusion. You are standing in self-respect, and that changes the entire energy. At the same time, they are scared to reach out because deep down they know words alone cannot fix what behavior damaged. They may want to say they cared. They may want to explain their silence, but they know explanation is not the same as change. That is where they feel trapped. One part of them wants to stay hidden because it feels safer there. Another part wants to grow, but growth costs something. It asks for discomfort. It asks for honesty. It asks for accountability. And right now they are sitting in that discomfort without fully knowing how to move through it. There is something deeply painful they are starting to see. You were not just part of their life. You were also a mirror, showing them who they could have become emotionally. And instead of stepping toward that growth, they turned away. Now that mirror feels like something they lost. They are learning that delayed growth does not disappear. It comes back heavier when it is finally faced. That is the weight they feel now, and while they sit with that, they are noticing something else about you. You did not collapse in the way they expected. You did not remain frozen in the same pain. You adapted. You healed in your own way. You chose yourself in ways that were not obvious at first, but are impossible to ignore now. That is why the energy feels different when they think of you. The version of you they once knew is no longer the full picture. You are not available through confusion anymore. You are not reachable through inconsistency anymore. You are clearer, more grounded, more aware of your own worth. And they did not expect that shift. They are realizing they cannot walk back into your life carrying the same energy they left with. Half effort no longer belongs near the person you are becoming. Emotional instability no longer fits your standards. They can feel that mismatch very clearly. It creates conflict inside them because they do not want to return unchanged. But they also do not yet know how to fully become the person this connection would now require. So they remain in awareness without action, and that space is uncomfortable. They are beginning to see you not as someone they once had, but as someone who has grown beyond the version of the bond they emotionally abandoned. That creates respect. It also creates regret. They understand now that you were not asking for too much. You were asking for emotional presence, honesty, consistency, basic things, foundation things, but they were not able to offer them in a stable way. So instead of stepping up, they stepped back, and now the emotional result of that choice is standing in front of them. You are no longer waiting in the same way. You are no longer giving endless access without clarity in return. That one shift has changed the whole structure of the connection. They can feel that you are observing more now, reacting less, thinking more clearly, and that clarity is no longer something they can easily influence. That is why their energy feels unstable. They are responding to a version of you that no longer moves from confusion or emotional dependence. You are moving from awareness now, and awareness changes everything. They are also being pushed towards something they avoided for a very long time: accountability. Not only for what they said, but for what they failed to say. Not only for actions they took, but for actions they kept postponing. Avoidance has a price, and that price is finally visible. At the same time, you are no longer trying to rescue someone else from their own emotional distance. You have entered a space where your peace matters more than mixed signals. That is not coldness, it is clarity, and clarity changes how every connection works. They are beginning to understand that emotional access cannot be expected while emotional responsibility is still missing. That responsibility was missing before. Now they are feeling the distance it created. They also see something difficult. The version of you who tolerated confusion for too long is no longer active in the same way. That version changed through pain, reflection, and growth. It cannot be brought back just to make someone else comfortable again. They are facing the possibility that what they took for granted may no longer be available in the old form. That realization stirs fear, regret, and reflection all at once. They are not only grieving the connection, they are grieving the version of you who stayed longer, tried harder, and gave more chances than you should have. Because that version is fading. In its place is someone stronger, someone clearer, someone who no longer abandons themselves to keep someone else comfortable. If this truth feels heavy, keep going, because there is still one more layer. Awareness alone does not repair anything. It only reveals the damage more clearly. They are starting to understand that love cannot survive on intention alone. Feeling something is not enough. Wanting something is not enough. It takes steady action, emotional presence, truth, and responsibility. Without those things, a bond does not usually explode. It slowly dissolves. It becomes distance. That is what happened here. You did not vanish overnight. You evolved. You learned. You built boundaries. You stopped betraying your own peace for the sake of someone else's uncertainty. That is why you feel different now. That is why you respond differently now. And that is why they feel the change so sharply. They are now standing where they can finally see what they could not see before. But seeing is not the same as becoming different. That is where they remain stuck. They are aware, but not yet transformed. They are emotional, but not yet stable. They are reflective, but not yet consistent. And that gap is the very thing keeping them from moving in a clean and honest way. Meanwhile, you are no longer sitting inside that gap. You are outside it. You are building a life that does not depend on emotional confusion. You are moving with more direction than before. That is why this cannot return to its old form. Once someone stops waiting in confusion and starts living from clarity, the old dynamic cannot simply restart. They are learning that in real time, and as they process all of this, they are being forced to admit something they once denied. You were not temporary. You were not easily replaceable. You mattered deeply. And meaning does not vanish just because it was mishandled. But meaning alone cannot rebuild what consistency failed to protect. So now they are left holding regret, reflection, and delayed awareness. And you are left holding growth, direction, and self-respect. The distance between those two states is becoming impossible to ignore. You are no longer in the waiting season of your life. You are in the building season. And that changes everything from this point forward. As they watch from a distance, they are beginning to understand a hard truth. Real strength was never about keeping someone emotionally attached while you stayed uncertain and half-present. Real strength was the ability to walk away when your emotional space was no longer being respected or cared for. They see that in you now. You are no longer the person who keeps filling empty spaces just to stop something from ending. You are the person who recognized when a bond was not being nurtured and chose peace instead. That shift happened quietly, through small choices, through private moments, through days where you decided not to chase, not to force, not to keep carrying something that was not being carried equally. They are still stuck in what-ifs, replaying moments where they could have been more honest, more available, more real. But those memories feel heavier now because they are no longer just memories, they are consequences. They are beginning to understand that the silence between you is not simply a pause, it is a mirror. It reflects every time they stepped back, every time they avoided giving clarity, every time they assumed the bond would remain open without real effort. For a long time they believed they could return whenever they were ready. They thought emotional access would still be there. But now they see something different. You did not just place boundaries around the same old emotional space. You changed that space completely. It is not the same place they walked away from. That truth unsettles them because now they see they are not just delayed, they are distant. And the longer they sit in that distance, the more they are forced to respect the strength it took for you to get here. You handled inconsistency without becoming bitter. You kept your standards without losing your softness. You protected yourself without losing your dignity. That was never weakness. That was maturity. That was growth. And now they can finally see the difference between what you gave and what they gave. A big part of their urgency comes from one deep fear, that you are no longer emotionally reachable in the same way, not because you hate them, not because you are filled with rage, but because you are calm now. And calmness in this kind of story is powerful. Calmness means closure may already be forming inside, even if no final speech was ever made. They are starting to understand that your peace no longer depends on them. That truth changes their role completely. They are no longer the center of your emotional world. They are becoming a memory inside it. And that shift is hard for them to accept. They also cannot keep blaming timing, distance, or outside circumstances the way they once did. They are being pushed toward a more honest reflection. They were not emotionally present in the way you needed when it mattered most. That truth is not easy, but they can no longer escape it. They are beginning to understand that you were asking for simple things: consistency, emotional presence, clarity, respect. Those were never unreasonable requests. They were the base of a healthy connection. But those needs were not met, and the absence of that effort built a distance too real to ignore. As they sit with this awareness, something else is changing inside them. They are no longer only remembering you, they are comparing who they were then with what they understand now. And that comparison hurts. It shows them the gap between intention and action, between feeling and showing up, between wanting and doing. They are also seeing you differently now, not as someone waiting, not as someone emotionally stuck, but as someone who has moved beyond the pattern they once kept alive. You are no longer responding from the same place. You are understanding, observing, and continuing forward. That changes everything. Because now they see they cannot return to the same dynamic. That version of the bond no longer exists. If anything is ever rebuilt, it cannot be built on old habits. It would need honesty, stability, consistent effort, real action, not promises, not emotional speeches, not temporary regret. And they know that. That is why they feel both pulled toward you and stopped by their own unfinished growth. They want the connection, But they also know connection asks for responsibility, and responsibility is the very thing they once avoided. Now they are carrying the emotional weight of that avoidance. Meanwhile, you are no longer shaping your life around uncertainty. You are no longer waiting for someone else to define where you stand. You have started creating that clarity inside yourself. That is why this feels so different now. They are finally understanding that your stepping back was not sudden. It was a process, a slow and painful realization that something here was no longer aligned with your emotional well-being. Once that realization settled in, your choices changed. Your energy changed. Your standards changed. And now they are standing in front of that truth. They can see that you are not the same person who once waited in confusion, hoping effort would arrive someday. You are the person who learned from that confusion and grew past it. You are building now, building peace, building boundaries, building a life that does not rest on mixed signals. And that is the real message moving through this moment. Not that they feel pressure, not that they feel regret, but that you have changed in a deep and lasting way. You did not become colder. You became clearer. You did not become harder. You became wiser. You did not lose your heart. You learned how to protect it. And that changes what happens next. Because from this point on, anything that comes near you must come with truth, effort, and emotional responsibility. Anything less will no longer fit the life you are creating. And that is not sadness. That is growth. That is power. That is the shift they are finally seeing. Maybe too late, but clearly now.